Ever had that teacher? You know, the one who just got you. Not just like understood the school stuff, but actually saw you as a person.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're getting at today, that power of care, but like way deeper. We're diving into ethics of care in education. And we've got some serious research papers lined up, even
Right.
stories from teachers in Kenya.
Oh, and there's this thought experiment. It might make you rethink your whole moral compass, so buckle up.
It's wild how ethics of care isn't just like being nice, you know? It's this whole philosophy, how we decide what's right and wrong.
Right.
Especially about how we like treat each other, our responsibilities. And the really interesting part is care isn't just personal, it gets political.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Yeah, it shapes how schools work, communities, even society as a whole.
That's so true. It's like everyone's affected by this, no matter what you do, right?
Absolutely.
So, huge topic. Where do we even start? Okay, so to get ethics of care, we got to rewind a bit, see how people traditionally thought about morality. That's where Lawrence Kohlberg comes in, with his stages of moral development.
Holberg, yeah, wasn't he all about like we climb these levels of moral reasoning, trying to reach these universal principles?
Exactly. Like, there's this moral rule book we should all be following. And to show this, he used what's called the Heinz dilemma. So picture this. Heinz, his wife's dying.
Hey.
There's a drug, could save her, but crazy expensive, way out of Heinz's budget. So what does he do? Breaks into the pharmacy, steals the drug.
Ooh, tough one. Okay, listener, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Heinz, right or wrong? What would you do? See, Kohlberg, he'd use people's answers to figure out their moral level. But then Carol Gilligan comes along, shakes things up, challenges that whole framework.
Yeah, Gilligan, she was like, hold on, Kohlberg's onto something, but is he missing a piece? You know how gender plays into how we see these dilemmas?
Oh.
She noticed women, they often focus more on the relationships involved, the specific situation, not just some abstract rule.
So like with Heinz, a Gilligan lens, you'd ask, what about his bond with his wife? Or with the pharmacist? The ripple effects of stealing on the whole community.
Exactly. It's less about, here's the rule, apply it, and more about navigating that messy web of relationships, each situation unique.
So we've got these two big ideas, Kohlberg's universal rules, Gilligan saying context and connection matter. Can those even work together? Or are they like fundamentally opposed?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Both views offer really valuable insights, but to go full-on ethics of care, we got to go beyond this debate. We need to talk about Joan Tronto. She had a radical take on how we even think about care itself.
Joan Tronto, okay, that name rings a bell. Definitely come across her in the care ethics world. What's so different about her view?
See, with Tronto, care, it's not just, warm fuzzies and good vibes. She's saying it's like foundational, to how we structure society, our politics, the whole shebang. It goes way beyond just being nice to your neighbor.
So it's like how we treat, say, the elderly or folks experiencing homelessness. That's not just families figuring it out, right? It reflects on like our values as a whole society. It's getting real political, like you were saying.
Exactly. It's woven into everything. And to break it down, she's got these 4 phases of care, all connected, building on each other.
Okay, I'm a sucker for a good framework. Lay it on me.
All right, phase 1, caring about. It's noticing, recognizing someone's got a need, being tuned in to what's going on around you.
So if I see like a kid coming to school hungry every day or someone asking for help on the street, that's caring about.
You got it. But just noticing, that ain't enough. Right. So we go to phase 2, caring for it. Now you're stepping up, taking responsibility.
Okay, so it's moving from like awareness to action. Instead of just walking by, you're like, I gotta do something.
Yeah, you're choosing to get involved, make a difference.
Volunteering at that shelter, donating to the food bank, that kind of thing.
Exactly, you're owning it. But hold on. Good intentions, taking responsibility, that's great, but there's more. Phase 3, caring, the actual doing part. And here's the picker. You gotta be competent.
Makes sense. I could offer to help someone with their taxes, but if I'm clueless, I might mess them up worse.
Exactly. It's not just wanting to help, it's having the know-how, the resources to actually meet those needs effectively.
I'm with you.
Okay, last one might seem obvious, but it's crucial. Phase 4, care receiving. The person on the receiving end, they got to feel heard, understood.
Right, like it's not a one-way street.
Exactly. Their feedback shapes how that care happens.
Like
Good
can't
care.
can't just assume you know what's best for someone. Got to listen, be responsive. This is good stuff.
Right. Now, Tronto, she uses this to critique how we handle things like homelessness. She's saying we get stuck in the caring about phase a lot.
Oh, I see it.
We're aware of the problem, but are we really taking responsibility, coming up with solutions that work?
That's deep. It's a challenge to all of us to not just feel bad, but actually like roll up our sleeves and make a difference.
Yeah.
So how does all this apply to, say, a classroom?
That's where Nell Noddings comes in. Philosopher, huge impact on education, took these ethics of care ideas, put them into teacher-student relationships.
Okay, so for our listeners who are like teachers, parents, this is where it gets real, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's one thing to talk about care, but how do we actually live it out in schools?
Noddings would say, ditch that one-size-fits-all thinking. Care ethics, they're situational. No rule book covers every kid, every situation. It's understanding that individual, responding to their needs.
So ditch the rigid rules. Embrace that beautiful mess of human connection. I'm liking this.
Right. And Noddings, she's big on that connection being the foundation of ethical teaching. Like, think of a baby and their caregiver, that deep bond.
Oh, yeah.
That's the kind of relationship where students can really thrive.
Totally. When you feel truly seen, cared for by your teacher, you're more likely to, take risks, actually learn and grow.
And here's where she gets kind of controversial. Noddings says all the standardized testing, it can actually get in the way of care ethics.
Yeah, I see that. It's tough to build that real connection. Tailor your teaching to each student when you're just prepping for the next exam. It's like those tests, they reduce everything to numbers, no room for individual needs.
Exactly. She even says, straight up, a focus on standardization and universalization does not provide space for care ethics. Real tension there in our schools, but even beyond,
It makes me think of, like, all the rules at work. Are they actually helping us care for each other? Or are they just, like, barriers to connecting?
That's the question, isn't it? This whole tension, individualized care versus those universal codes. Researchers Dahlberg and Moss, they dug into this too.
Let's hear it. What's their take?
They're saying a lot of our policies, practices, they come from this desire for like universal codes, standards. And they actually say, quote, a universalistic ethical approach underlies much policy and practice. Universal codes that will govern practice and evaluation. These codes take the form of curricula, goals and targets, standards, quality measures, standardized measures of assessment.
So they're saying there's this push for, like, overarching rules, standardized measures.
Yeah.
Supposed to apply to everyone equally, no matter their situation.
Exactly. And while those codes can be helpful, they can clash with that individualized nature of care ethics.
Because caring is about seeing that individual responding to their unique needs, right?
Yeah. And sometimes that means, going off script, questioning the rules.
I can see that.
And Dahlberg and Moss, they suggest this push for universal codes, it often comes from wanting to avoid ambiguity, or potential bias when someone's making a judgment call. Rules feel safer.
It's easier to be like, here's the rule book, follow it, than to deal with the messiness of individual needs, make those judgment calls.
Right. But sometimes, doing the truly ethical thing, it means going beyond those rigid rules, trusting our own moral compass, but informed by those principles of care. And to show this in action, let's shift gears, look at a really inspiring example. Totally different context.
Ooh, hit me with some inspiration. Where are we going?
We're going to rural Kenya. Researchers studied how teachers were caring for kids, orphans, vulnerable children, incredibly tough circumstances.
Wow, I can't even imagine. Tell me more. We're talking like poverty, limited resources, so many social challenges. It's hard to even fathom trying to teach in that environment.
It is, but here's the thing. Even with all that going on, these teachers, they were incredible, going above and beyond to care for these kids, really living out Toronto's phases,
So not just caring about them, but taking action, providing support.
Exactly. They were giving food, clothes, emotional support, like a lifeline for those kids. And the researchers, they got this really powerful quote from one student, Elias, 12 years old. It really shows the impact of that care. He said, "This is a photo of my uniform. I want to share this photo because it is the only uniform I have. It is torn, and it is the one I wear when going to school. I feel embarrassed when I put it on. Parts of my body get exposed. Some children say bad things about me. This makes me sad and not wanting to go to school. Because of the embarrassment that my torn uniform causes me, my concentration and performance in school is poor."
Oh man, that just breaks your heart. It's like even something we take for granted, a decent uniform, it can affect a kid's whole well-being. They're learning everything.
And it shows how resilient these kids are and how much a caring teacher can make a difference. Even with all that hardship, they created this space, safe, supportive, really inspiring.
It does give you hope, stories like that. We can build a more caring world, even in the toughest situations. And it sounds like those Kenyan teachers, they were really living out what Dahlberg and Moss talk about, that relational ethics idea.
Yeah.
They have that quote, rather than ethics being a matter of prescribing, transmitting, and applying a code of rules, we are interested in ethical practice, which foregrounds active personal responsibility for making ethical choices, but not as an autonomous subject seeking objective truth, rather as an ethical actor in relationship with others.
Beautiful quote, right? Gets to the core of ethics of care. We're all connected. Ethical action comes from those relationships.
It's a whole different way of thinking, isn't it? Not just rules, but being more fluid, responsive. Care becomes like a way of life.
It is, and it's a challenge to us all, right?
Yeah.
If caring is ethical, how do we bring more of that into our own lives, not just following the rules, but building genuine connections with the people around us?
Big questions to think about. So, to wrap up this deep dive, let's recap what we've learned.
We started with those contrasting views, Kohlberg with his universal moral principles, and Gilligan emphasizing relationships, the specific context.
Then we got into Joan Tronto, her idea that care is political, not just personal. And those 4 phases of care, remember: caring about, caring for, the actual caring, and care receiving.
And Nil Noddings, bringing it all into the classroom, how care ethics are situational, the importance of those teacher-student bonds.
We talked about that tension too, individualized care versus those universal codes. Sometimes doing the right thing means going beyond the rules, trusting your judgment, informed by care.
And we found inspiration from those Kenyan teachers showing how powerful care can be, even in the face of so much adversity.
So listener, as you go about your day, think about what resonated with you. How can you be more caring in your own interactions? How can you help build a more compassionate world? We've got extra resources in the show notes, links to those studies, more reading on ethics of care. And we'd love to hear what you think. Connect with us on social media. Let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.